cultivate our motivation. And again, recognizing the rarity of having this precious human life. And we can do that by thinking of how difficult it is to create the causes for it. So we need good ethical conduct to just have an upper rebirth. And then we need some practice of the other far-reaching practices in order to create the other causes for a precious human life. And if we look just even at the principal cause, keeping good ethical conduct, is that easy to do? Do many people do it? When we read the newspapers every day, we see that there's an awful lot of unethical conduct going around. And to actually, live a life with pure ethical conduct is not so easy. There's our mind that wants to lie and fudge. And then there's the peer pressure from others to get ahead. And there's the often general society norm that do whatever you can get away with, just don't get caught, and that's okay. And so we see in the midst of this, to actually restrain our body, speech, and mind from negativity is not so easy and not necessarily widely done. And so just creating the cause for an upper rebirth takes some effort. Not to mention creating the other causes for precious human life. But today, somehow we have that precious human life, indicating that we've created those causes in the past. We know it's difficult to create them in the future. So having this present opportunity, it's very important that we use it wisely. And that we really make good choices. And think about the meaning of our life, the purpose of our life. The effects of our actions on ourselves in the future, the effects of our actions on other living beings. And so to help us create good ethical conduct for the future, we generate the altruistic intention to become Buddhas for the benefit of sentient beings. And so clearly that means not harming them. And not harming them is the meaning of ethical conduct. So with that in mind, then we'll listen to the establishments of the 4 mindfulnesses this evening. So when we do any of the Lamrim meditations, like this one on the rarity and difficulty of having a precious human life, you can do it from different perspectives. We can do it from now, looking in the past and saying, wow, I created the cause for this, and really think about the different causes of ethical conduct, and then generosity and fortitude and joyous effort, meditative stabilization, wisdom, compassion, and so forth. And to think, wow, I created that in the past and I have this opportunity now, and really think of what this opportunity brings us and rejoice at whatever we did in the past that created this opportunity, and get that sense of, oh, my present life is really very precious, very rare, and so I want to use it wisely and kindly. So we can do the meditation in that way, from the present, looking back to the past, helping us to make a strong determination to really live this life in the fullest Dharma way possible. Another way to do the meditation is to do it from the present, looking to the future, saying these are the causes of a precious human life in the future, and have I created them in this life? And then we start looking at our ethical conduct and, how well do we keep our precepts? Do we really, create the cause for a good, a good life in the future? And what are the societal pressures we face? What's this, the general societal standard? What's expected from our family? What kind of pressure do we have on us to act in non-virtuous ways? Or how do we get carried away by associating with bad friends to act in unethical ways? And then really thinking about that in terms of, well, am I creating now the causes to have another precious human life in the future? And if we are, then encourage ourselves to continue to do so. But if we aren't, then really say, oh, I better be more careful. Okay? So do you see how, with any meditation, you can do it in many different ways. You can do this in terms of a meditation on compassion for other sentient beings, and really think, how many sentient beings on our planet are keeping good ethical conduct. And this is only one of the causes for a precious human life. And how many people are actually doing that, and how many people aren't. And, of even the people who try to keep good ethical conduct, how often do we fudge? How often do we become lax and unconscientious and so on? Okay? So there's a lot of different places where you can take any one of the Lamrim meditations. So every time you do it, you do it in a different way, and you can, lead yourself in a different way to really understand this meditation and to understand the other Lamrim meditations in the context of this meditation. Yeah, because when you think about the rarity of having precious human life, and then let's say you think about the qualities of a Buddha, then you think, whoa, I have the possibility to develop those qualities with this life. Okay, so you see, you link it in with other meditations and use the meditations to really develop a very whole, integrated understanding of how things fit together. Okay? And then, you can meditate on it, the conventional way like that. And then you can meditate on ethical conduct as a cause for precious human life in terms of its ultimate nature and its emptiness, and reflect on how it's empty, but it exists dependently. And, how can it be empty and also function? And how can it be merely labeled and still function? And, so really trying to put that together in your mind as well. Okay? So we're going to continue tonight talking about feelings. And remember, happy, unhappy, and neutral feelings. So not the usual way that feelings mean as emotions in the West, but feelings happy, unhappy, and neutral. Okay, so we were going through chapter 9 of Shantideva, and we're on verse 92. Okay. Therefore, this analysis is an antidote to that false notion of the true existence of feelings. The meditative concentrations that arise from the field of investigation are the food of yogis. Okay, so the antidote for all the misconceptions that grasp at truly existent feelings is the wisdom that realizes emptiness. And this wisdom arises from probing awareness that really goes into the ultimate mode of existence, of feelings and of everything that the feelings depend upon. And this probing awareness has to be conjoined with serenity or shamatha, so that we have the mental stability and peacefulness in the mind to be able to really go deep in our meditation without getting distracted. And when we reach a conclusion, to really focus single-pointed on that conclusion to help us integrate it in our mind. You know, because often we get like a flash and we understand something, and then 30 seconds later it's gone. Or we remember the words of it, but the feeling of it isn't there. Yeah, so we need the serenity to help us stabilize that. Okay, so when skilled practitioners experience pleasure or happiness, they recognize that these feelings aren't truly existent and that they exist like dreams, so they don't get hung up on them. They avoid craving for those happy feelings to continue. They avoid getting fearful of those happy feelings ending. They don't crave for the seemingly attractive objects that bring those happy feelings, but instead their mind stays very balanced. Yeah. It's very interesting. When we notice our feelings, we seem to get very attached to the object. Remember before we were saying that happy feelings, and we get attached to one kind of object, and unhappy feelings to another, and neutral feelings to another. And yet, you know, and there's some confusion in our mind as if that feeling comes from that object, comes from the side of the object. But when we and so we get attached to the object. But when we really look at it, we're actually much more attached to the pleasurable feeling than we are to the object that causes us. Because if we didn't have the pleasurable feeling, we wouldn't be attached to the object. Okay, so it's the attachment to the pleasurable feeling that comes first, and then the attachment to the object. And the same way with aversion to unpleasant things, you know, we think that, oh, I don't like this person, or I don't like this situation. But actually, why don't we like them? Because we have aversion to the unpleasant feeling. If we didn't have aversion to that unpleasant feeling, we wouldn't have aversion to the object. Okay? So, you know, it's interesting to look in our minds sometimes when some craving arises and we think, I need this, I need this, I need this. You know, I need to be with this person, or I need this thing to eat, or I need this situation, or I need this object. And really check, is it that we need that object, or are we craving the feeling that we associate with that object? And is there another way to create that feeling in our mind without depending on having to get that object? Because getting the object isn't always possible, you know? So I was saying, you know, in the Vinaya class that sometimes you say, oh, I want somebody to hug me. But, you know, we're monastics, we can't go around hugging people. What we're really craving is that feeling of being cared for that you get when somebody hugs you. Well, can we recreate that feeling of being cared for in our own mind without hugging anybody? Yeah? And we begin to realize, oh, I can create any feeling I want to in my mind. If I can sit in meditation position and get so unhappy and so angry, even though the person I can't stand is not within 1,000 miles of me, you know, why can't I also create a pleasant feeling in my mind without getting attached to the external objects? Okay. And then you also start analyzing that pleasant feeling and saying, is it really pleasant? Yeah, why do I consider this feeling pleasant? Or some other one, why do I consider it unpleasant? What exactly is, you know, pleasant about this feeling? What exactly is unpleasant about the other feeling? And you just focus on the experience of the feeling. Okay? And you begin to see that these things are just, they're kind of like, you know, fog. You can't grasp them. They seem to be there, but you can't hold on to them and grasp them. Okay? We have to do it in our own meditation. Okay? So similarly, skilled practitioners, when they experience pain, they don't get all bummed out, you know. They realize that the painful feeling is a dependent arising. There's nothing inherently painful in it. So they don't have to crave to be free of it. You know, they see it's impermanent, it arises, depends on causes and conditions, it ceases. Yeah? And so the painful feelings and the pleasant feelings and even the neutral feelings don't rule their lives. And wouldn't that be nice not to have our feelings rule our life? You know? Because right now, I mean, boy, we're so just under the control of attachment, aversion, and confusion in relationship to pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. You know? We're just completely befuddled by all of this. Our whole life is run around this, and we don't even understand it. Okay, so, you know, meditating on the emptiness of the feelings is a very good antidote to all of this. When skilled practitioners contemplate feelings, also they develop very strong compassion for other sentient beings because they see how other sentient beings are run around by their attachment, aversion, and confusion about feelings. And instead of criticizing those people, they have compassion for them. Yeah, because we realize, oh, you know, somebody did something that I really don't like. Well, why? They were having an unpleasant feeling and they had aversion for it. They had the craving to be free of that feeling, and that motivated them to do some action which interfered with, you know, what I'm doing. So it's not that that person's evil, you know, we can have some compassion for them. They're just ruled by their, you know, push-pull relationship with their feelings, just like we are. Yeah? So what use is there criticizing them and blaming them when we're the same way? Yeah, let's have compassion for ourselves and compassion for them. Okay? So the 7-point mind training, you know, that we have often studied, they talk about 3 objects and 3 feelings and 3 poisons. So the 3 objects are attractive, unattractive, and neutral, and the 3 feelings are pleasurable, you know, pleasure, pain, and neutral. And then the 3 poisons are attachment, anger, hostility, and confusion. And so you can see how those 3 objects, 3 feelings, and then the 3 poisons match up. Okay? So, you know, ordinary beings, when they meet an attractive object, then they feel pleasure, then attachment arises, then that attachment makes them act. You know, they experience something they consider unpleasant, you know, or unattractive, then they have a painful feeling, then aversion, hostility arise, then that motivates them to say and do things, okay? And so, you know, when we're functioning like that, then having any kind of lasting happiness becomes very, very difficult, you know, if not impossible. So since we can't always avoid the objects that we find attractive, unattractive, or neutral, you know, and those feelings come up in reaction to the objects very quickly, what we have to do is find instead a way to prevent the 3 poisons from arising in reaction to those 3 feelings. Okay? So of course, you know, one way is just not to have contact with the objects. Then you don't have the feelings arising and you don't have those disturbing emotions coming from the feelings. So That's one purpose of living in a protected environment, or one purpose of taking monastic precepts, is that we don't, we deliberately try and not have contact with objects where we know our mind is going to get out of control. And then this gives us the mental space to work in our meditations on overcoming the attachment, anger, and ignorance that arise due to those feelings. But since it's not always possible, even if you hold precepts or no matter how much you live in a protected environment, it's not possible to never encounter attractive, unattractive, or neutral objects, then, the real challenge is to do away with those feelings. We can't, the feelings just come immediately in reaction to the objects. Then the real challenge is to do away with the attachment, hostility, and confusion that arise in relationship to them. Okay? So when we're studying the 7-point thought training, one way that we practice to help us, counteract those emotions that then motivate karma, okay, to stop that whole process of afflictions and karma creating suffering. One way to do that is by doing the taking and giving meditation. Okay, so we have some affliction arise in our mind. Let's say I'm having attachment arise in my mind. I really want to be with certain people. I really miss being with them. I'm not happy where I am. I'm feeling lonely or whatever it is. Then I think of all the people in samsara, in whatever realm they're born into, and I think of all of them who feel lonely, or who feel unloved, or who feel, separated from their dear ones. And I think of their suffering, and then imagine taking that on and using it to destroy my own attachment, my own aversion, my own ignorance, okay? And then thinking that my heart is completely clear, radiating a light from it, and thinking of giving away my body, merit, and possessions, with love and with kindness to all those beings so that they have them and they experience joy. Okay? So the taking and giving meditation is a very powerful way to work with these three feelings, And so that's one way we work with the three feelings in terms of using the method side of the path, the bodhicitta side of the path, because the taking and giving meditation falls on that side and helps us develop love and compassion. Or we can meditate on the emptiness of the feelings, and that's developing the wisdom side of the path. Or we put the two together, and we do the taking and giving meditation at the same time, realizing that ourselves as the person taking the feelings, the action of taking the feelings that we're taking from others, that all of this is empty and yet dependent. Okay. So then we move on to Shantideva, refutes feelings like we've done so far. Then he moves on to the section of refuting truly existent contact. And the reason he does this is because when we study the 12 links, okay, the 6th link is contact, and the 7th link is feeling, and then the 8th link is craving, and the 9th clinging, Okay, so contact is the cause for feeling, and if contact doesn't truly exist, then feeling can't truly exist either. Because if contact, if contact is independent, and doesn't depend on causes and conditions, then feeling may be independent too. But if contact depends on other elements, then certainly feeling does, and anything that is dependent is not truly existent. Okay, so we get into the whole thing first of what in the world is contact? Okay, and it's one of these things that's a little bit weird because it's described, in the context of the 12 links. It's an afflicted mental factor, which contacts, the quality of the object, attractive, unattractive, and neutral. And then it due to the convening of the object, the sense power, and the consciousness, then it brings them together and produces feeling. Okay? So contact is kind of what helps cognition occur. Because you have the object, you have the sense power, and then you have a previous moment of clear and knowing of mind, and immediately preceding consciousness. Okay? So those are the three causes for a moment of consciousness. The object, the sense power, preceding moment of consciousness. But to bring those together so that a cognition is actually produced, you need contact. Okay? So, so contact arises from the coming together of those three things: the objects, the sense power, and the immediately preceding mind. Okay, and so because there's 6 types of objects, objects of sight, forms, sound, smells, taste, touch, and mental objects, and because there's 6 sense powers, okay, the eye, the ear, nose, tongue, tactile and mental sense powers. And then there's also 6 kind of consciousnesses. Yeah, your visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, and mental consciousness. So there's 3, these 3 sets of 6. So then there's also 3 sets of 6. There's also a set of 6 types of contact. Okay, the contact that causes a visual cognition, that causes an auditory cognition, and so on. Okay, so there's these 6 types of contact. Okay, and contact leads to feeling in the next moment. Yeah, so it brings the things together. In the Pali tradition, they describe contact as the meeting of the object, the sense power, and the consciousness. Okay? So the meeting of these 3, which are the 3 causes of the cognition, when these meet, that's called contact. And that's a mental factor. Okay?
Is it afflicted in the Pali?
Yeah, whenever you talk of of something in the 12 links, it's afflicted. Anything in the 12 links is afflictive. Okay? Okay, so afflicted with what? I've talked about this many times before. What's it afflicted with? Ignorance. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, we may wonder, we're going through so many different ways of refuting true existence here. Yeah, and you may say, why in the world is Shantideva talking about so many different ways of refuting true existence? Why not just give us one simple way and, be done with it already? Okay, and so the reason is because Shantideva is addressing practitioners who have sharp faculties. And so sharp faculty practitioners, bodhisattvas in this case, are going to want to understand emptiness from a whole bunch of different perspectives, because not only because it deepens their own understanding of emptiness, but also because in order to lead others and teach others, they have to be familiar with all these different ways, because different people are going to resonate with one or another of the different methods. Okay? So bodhisattvas really try and see emptiness from many perspectives, and that gives their realization of emptiness very, very great power, the power that enables them to use it to eliminate the afflictive obscurations. Okay, now, in talking about contact and refuting truly existent contact, then the first approach he talks about is to refute partless particles. Okay, because the idea is that if you have an object, it's made of particles, and the sense power is also made of subtle particles. So how does the contact between the object and the sense power occur? Yeah, we say, oh, the eye contacts the object. Well, how does this actually occur? Or we say the tongue tastes the sweetness. How does this occur? So the lower philosophical schools say that there are partless particles. Okay, in other words, there's particles that are the smallest building blocks of existence, and these particles don't have any parts. They don't have any directions. They can't be divided in any way. You know, they're partless because they can't be divided. And so they don't have like a front side or a back side or a right side or a left side or north, south, east, west. They don't have any of those sides. So try and think of the tiniest particle you can imagine that doesn't have any sides. Okay, that's what they believe is the basic building block of, you know, all the material things. And even, you know, in Western culture, people for centuries have been looking for the tiniest thing, haven't they? You know? And even now, the scientists are trying to find the tiniest particle that can't be subdivided, you know? So something that can't be subdivided can't have different sides. Okay, so then how are these things going to relate to each other if they don't have parts, directional parts? So Shantideva says, if there is space, and here what he means is a gap, if there's a gap between a sense power and its objects, how do they have any contact? And if there's no gap, if there's no space, yeah, then they should conflate into just one. And what would be in contact with what? Okay, so you have the, you know, the object and the sense power, and these two need to come in contact with each other in order to produce the consciousness. So here's the object, here's the sense power, okay? If this has partless particles and this has partless particles, you know, then how can they touch? Because in order to touch, there has to be one side that touches and one side that doesn't touch. Okay? So, if there's no space, if there's space between those two, then they can't touch, can they? Okay. But if there's no space between the two, and if they don't have any sides, so they don't have one side that touches and one side that isn't touching, then the two partless particles should merge and become one. And they should exist in the same place and completely conflate into one. Okay. Now, if you have all these partless particles that, you know, they can't touch because there's a space in between, so that doesn't work. And if they do touch, then they all conflate into one, which means that you're only going to wind up with one partless particle when you put them all together, which means you can't have any kind of gross forms at all, because they all conflate into one. Then when you look and you see, well, actually it's not possible to have partless particles, because if they touch, you can't have contact, and if they don't touch, you can't have contact. Okay? You getting it? So if the only way that partless particles can come together is refuted, those two ways, then you're only left with the conclusion, well, there can't be partless particles. Okay, so that's what he's saying in this verse. Okay? And so if you don't have that contact between the sense organ and the object with partless particles, then you're certainly not going to have feeling. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so, that's why he was saying, what would contact what? So it's interesting to think about, what is my understanding of what things are? And do I think that there's like these partless particles, at the edge, and they touch? Yeah? How does that happen? And, even looking at it from a scientific viewpoint and thinking, okay, there's light rays coming in, and the light rays are striking the retina, the cones and rods, on my retina. Now, how do they touch each other? Yeah? How do they touch each other? How does that happen? And how does that produce some kind of electrical reaction or chemical reaction? And then that goes through, all these nerves and goes into my brain. And then somehow I wind up with an image of an object out there. Isn't that rather strange? Yeah? That there's just kind of, light rays interacting with different things, and then all of a sudden we wind up with some kind of image of an object. And here's looking at it from a Western scientific view, and we think there's a real object out there. But actually, the only thing that's happening is different colors of light rays are interacting with the rods and cones on our retina. That's all that's happening. And yet we're perceiving these external objects and getting attached to them and thinking that happiness comes from them and thinking that they're real. Isn't that strange? And when we hear sounds, all that's happening is, there's sound waves, and they hit, the hammer and the stirrup, and then, they do their thing, and then there's nerves, and that goes to the brain, and there's different activities there. And then we, all of a sudden, hear something that has meaning, and we think it's real, and we react to it. And all it is sound waves interacting with things in our body. Yeah? So, I find even if you think of it from a Western scientific viewpoint and go through the actual dependent arising of the way a cognition occurs, from a scientific viewpoint, it's still, how in the world am I thinking of truly existent objects if all my perceptual processes are just this? It doesn't make any sense to think these objects are objective out there. And, how can I think they're worthy of being attached, getting attached to? And how can I think that they have, pleasure from their own side? When all there is just different kind of waves interacting with different, whatever sense organ, subtle sense organ there happens to be in my body. So strange, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah? It's very weird, Why do we think all these things are so real? It's just light rays, Yeah? Like we're all looking at each other right now, and we think there's real people there. Why? Well, we're seeing people's bodies. Well, all the things we're seeing are just, the interaction of different kinds of light rays interacting with the material on our retina. How does that? You see how we go from that to like there's truly existent things out there that we're battling with in our mind. Yeah? Instead of just seeing them as dependently arising. Okay, Shantideva continues. One particle cannot penetrate another because there is no empty space in a partless particle, and the particles too are of equal size. When there is no interpenetration, there is no mingling. Without mingling, there is no contact. Moreover, how can there be contact with something that has no parts? If contact between partless things is seen, then show it, please. Okay? So if these, in the viewpoint of the, Vaibhasikas and Sacchantikas, there's these partless particles, okay? And the partless particles have no empty space between them, okay? So they can't, we just went through the thing of there can't be contact if there's space. They can't be contact if there's no space. And there's no way for them to interpenetrate each other because they're completely solid and there's no space in them either. Okay? So, and then they're also of equal size. So if they can't interpenetrate, then they can't mingle. So, this whole thing of them all conflating into one is kind of ridiculous. And if without them interpenetrating and mingling, then you certainly don't have any contact between them. Okay? And so then how can there be contact with something that has no parts? Because whenever there's contact, you have to have one part that contacts the other and the other part that doesn't, contact. And then Shantideva is saying to the Vaibhasikas and Sacchantikas, well, if you really think that there's partless particles that can contact, then please show it to me. I want to see it, And then they just kind of sit there and go, oh. Okay. And then verse 96, he says, contact with consciousness is immaterial. Contact with consciousness, which is immaterial, is untenable. As analyzed before, a collection as well does not truly exist. Okay, so not only is contact between the sense power and the object not possible, but contact between the consciousness and the object isn't possible either, because the object is material, the consciousness is immaterial, so how can the two things touch? Okay? And then, if you're saying the contact is the aggregation it's the collection of the object and the sense power and the consciousness, then a collection too is not truly existent because a collection has parts and it can be dissected. Okay? So, any way we're trying to look at it, we come to the point that contact is something that's just merely designated. Yeah, we can't find some contact there that here's the contact and we draw the line around it and this is it. Instead, we see that contact is just what we label this whole thing of the interaction of a object and a sense power and a preceding moment of mind producing a new cognition. That connection is what we label contact. And aside from that, finding some kind of truly existent contact cannot be done. Okay, so if contact is something that's just designated, then, and it's not something real, then it can't be the cause of something real. We can't have a truly existent feeling either. Okay, so Shantideva says, thus, when there is no contact, from what does a feeling arise? When there's no truly existent contact, how do you get a truly existent feeling? And so what is the reason for this exertion, and what could be harmed by what? And then he says, when there is no truly, in parentheses, truly existent one who feels, and feeling as well does not truly exist, then seeing this situation, why not give up craving? Okay? So since contact doesn't truly exist, truly existent feelings can't exist either. Yeah? And so if the feelings are not truly existent, why should we wear ourselves out seeking pleasurable feelings and being so afraid and having so much aversion to unpleasurable feelings? Why do we go through this constant struggle day by day, moment by moment, to experience only pleasant, happy feelings and never experience painful, unpleasant feelings. If the feelings are not real, yeah, if they're dependently arising things, if when we search for what they are, we can't find them, why do we wear ourselves out craving them? Good question, isn't it? Yeah. So if truly existent feelings exist, they would be permanent and they would be unchanging because they wouldn't depend on anything else. So they wouldn't depend on the object. They wouldn't even depend on contact. Okay? But, you know, for feelings to arise, you need an object, you need the organ, you need the preceding consciousness, you need the contact. Okay? So all these things are dependently arising. And things that are dependently arising are like dreams in the sense that they appear true, but when you search for something to hang on to, there's nothing there. You know, they're false. You know, what appears to us, what we think is real, is actually mistaken. Okay? And so if there's no truly existent person who feels, no truly existent mental state that feels, no truly existent feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling, you know, if there's not, you know, no truly existent action of feeling, if none of these things are truly existent and real and made, you know, concrete and identifiable when we analyze and search for them, if we can't find any of them, then why wear ourselves out chasing them? Yeah? Doesn't make any sense. Yeah? So this is something we really need to give a lot of reflection to. Even if we just understand the argument intellectually, there's something inside of us when we are in pain. You know, we don't have the sensation that our pain is dependently arising. Our pain is truly existent, and our distress is truly existent. And we are entitled to be angry and distressed at pain because it's real. And, you know, so even if we intellectually understand the article, it's so difficult to penetrate and combat our instant reaction, you know, and our craving to be free of this unpleasant feeling. Yeah, it's so difficult. And the same with the pleasurable feeling. The moment we get it, our mind is like, you know, we're just hooked. And even if we say, oh, it's just dependent arising, there's nothing really there, you know, we can't shake the strength with which we are grasping it as being real. You know? So that's why we really need to think about this a lot, you know, and look at it from many perspectives, really examining our own feelings, using these kinds of reasoning, so that we try and understand it, you know, in terms of our real life experience, so that then we can do something, you know, so that we don't fall prey to all the push-pull and the craving. Yeah? But boy, feelings are the thing that hook us, aren't they? Yeah? Aren't we hooked? Completely, yeah? You know, pleasant feeling, I want it. Unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling, you know, we're really like push button. Yeah? And yet it's all for nothing that's real. Okay. Since both those things which are seen and touched are like a dream or an illusion, and their derivative feelings are also like illusions. Furthermore, a feeling, because it has arisen simultaneously with the mind, is not perceived by that mind. So this is verse 99. So here he's questioning, what is it that experiences a feeling? What mind experiences a feeling? Okay, so here we're looking at feelings as the object of what we're going to apprehend, okay? So if, where did that go? Okay, so conventionally speaking, we say every mind has a feeling that arises simultaneous with it. Remember, because feeling is one of the 5 omnipresent mental factors. So conventionally, there's a feeling with it, with every mental state. However, if that feeling truly existed from its own side, it could not be experienced by that mental state. This is because the feeling would be independent of everything else, and thus would have no relationship with the primary consciousness that it accompanies. Okay? And then also, in the context of true existence, a mind can't experience a feeling that arises simultaneous with it. Because if we're thinking, you know, here's the feeling of pleasant and here's the mind experiencing the feeling, okay, if these things are truly existent, then does the mind experience a feeling that is past, present, or future? It can't produce, the mind can't experience a feeling in the past because it's gone and over. It can't experience a feeling that is present and simultaneous with it in the context of true existence, because then the feeling couldn't act as the cause for, you know, as the object that feeling is, that consciousness is experiencing. And definitely a future feeling can't be perceived by a present consciousness because it hasn't happened. So in the context of true existence, yeah, you know, we couldn't even experience feelings to start with. Okay? And you know, it's interesting when you think about that, because actually, you know, whatever we experience, we're thinking that that thing is what exists in the present. But actually, by the time we experience it, what we're experiencing is the past. It's gone, isn't it? Yeah. So everything we're experiencing actually doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. And you know, in the sense of there being, like when we see the stars, we're looking and we're saying there's a star there, but that star may be 20 million light years away, and maybe that star has already disappeared, it's already exploded, there's nothing there. But the light is just reaching us now, so we think, oh, that star exists. But actually, it's gone. Yeah. And so whatever we're experiencing moment by moment, you know, if you try and actually locate, what is it you're perceiving? You know, we can't find a truly existent thing in the past we're perceiving because it's over. We can't find a truly existent present thing we're perceiving because then it couldn't act as a cause for a consciousness. And we can't, you know, cognize a future object because it hasn't arisen yet. So in the context of true existence, when we're trying to analyze and find things, we come up with these kinds of puzzles, and there's just no way to remedy them except to say things exist only nominally. That's the only possible way to remedy these puzzles, is they exist nominally. Because when you search, you can't find. Yeah, it's really, it's quite something. Yeah. However, because feelings arise dependently, paying attention to karma and its effects makes sense. So just because we can't identify a truly existent object and we can't identify a truly existent feeling, you know, and we can't even identify truly existent craving, it doesn't mean that we just say, oh, well, then none of these things exist at all, and so forget about them. But rather, because these things don't truly exist, you know, they exist dependently, you know, because things exist dependently, causes bring effects. So if causes bring effects, then we need to pay attention to what causes we're creating. Okay? If things were truly existent, causes couldn't bring effects, because causes and effects would be totally unrelated and disconnected. Yeah? So cause and effect only functions in a universe where things are empty of true existence. But don't think that emptiness means non-existence, and thus shine on any kind of care about our actions and the result of our actions. But because things don't truly exist, you know, that they are dependently arising, so our actions do bring results, so let's pay attention to our actions. And since our actions come about due to afflictions, and afflictions are reactions to feelings, you know, then let's pay attention to the feelings and find a healthy way to relate to these feelings with wisdom and with compassion, so that instead, you know, the contact and doesn't produce the feelings, which produce the afflictions, which produce the karma, which produces more suffering, more samsara. Okay? And so, okay, maybe we better stop here. Okay, so we kind of did that. Okay, but we'll review that next time. Okay. Then we are soon coming to, you know, we have to go through yet the mind and phenomena, but in terms of Shantideva's, you know, analysis of their ultimate nature. And then we're done with the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So I wanted to talk a little bit and get people thinking about what the next topic would be. I was thinking maybe the paths and grounds, you know, so that you can learn something about, you know, get the general roadmap for enlightenment. Yeah, and you know, some people don't like paths and grounds. They say, you know, but I actually personally have found it very helpful because it lays out a roadmap and it gives you some idea of what you need to cultivate and what you experience at certain levels in the path. And knowing that will help us when we have different experiences assess kind of where we're at. And I think that's very helpful because without it, there, you know, we have some experience and we could think, wow, you know, I'm nearly enlightened or whatever, and get arrogant, and then that arrogance actually just becomes an obstacle in our practice. Yeah? People interested in paths and grounds? Yeah, definitely. Okay. Good. And so when we're studying the paths and grounds, we'll also study the Lamrim topics that relate to them. So for example, when we're doing the paths and grounds of the hearers and solitary realizers, we'll really think about renunciation because that's the demarcation line that gets you into the first path. And when we do the paths and grounds of the Bodhisattvas, then we'll explore bodhicitta, and because that's the demarcation line. And then of course, you know, as you're going up the paths and grounds of any of these vehicles, the discrimination amongst them is done on the basis of the realization of emptiness. So that comes in there too. So the 3 principal aspects of the path comes in. Okay?
Can I ask a question about this? Back to the 3 objects, 3 feelings, and 3 poisons. The 3 objects, like, it's like the 3 objects we assess as attractive, neutral, and unattractive before we even get to contact. Is that right? And then, if that's true, what's the mechanism that sets off that chain?
Okay, so you're asking if before we even contact something, have we assessed already that it's attractive, unattractive, or neutral?
Or is that part of contact?
Or is that part of contact? Well, they say that contact, kind of contacts the attractiveness, the unattractiveness, or the neutrality of the object. But it seems to me that you can't really say that because that makes it sound like it's attractive from its own side, and so that doesn't work. So it seems to me that somehow it could be that, this is just my opinion, that maybe we've had contact with that object before, and so we have certain ideas about it, and so when we have contact with it again, we're on the lookout for whatever our previous experience was, and if we had a pleasant experience with it before, we're kind of, we're habituated to looking for that, or an unpleasant experience, we're habituated to looking for that. But of course, sometimes we're really surprised, aren't we? Yeah, and it doesn't work out, and our memory, our previous habituation has to get thrown out. Yeah, because it's something that we're projecting onto the object that isn't really there. Okay. So maybe, kind of look in your own mind and see, where does this attraction come from? What makes something attractive? Where did it come from? Is it there on the side of the object? Yeah. And if I'm predisposed to finding something attractive, where did that come from? Yeah, some kind of previous conditioning. So what was that previous conditioning, or what were those previous, causes? And when have I been completely flabbergasted because what I expected to feel is not what I have felt? Yeah. Okay.